Welcome to Integrated Infrastructure, the podcast that brings you news and views from industry leaders involved in the development, design, construction and management of the many built forms that make up Australia's integrated infrastructure. I'd like to acknowledge the Gadigal people as traditional custodians of the land on which we recorded this podcast, and I pay my respects to the elders, past, present and future, and recognise their continuing connection and contribution to this land. I'd like to extend that respect to any Aboriginal people who are listening to this podcast. My guest today is Michael Silman, Project Director for Sydney Metro Martin Place Integrated Station Development with Macquarie Group. We'll be talking about Michael's career, the genesis story of this incredible landmark project, and how Metro Martin Place fits into the city of Sydney and its future. If you have any questions or want to discuss any of these topics in more detail, don't hesitate to reach out. Right, let's get into it. Michael, welcome to the Integrated Infrastructure Podcast. It's fantastic to have you here. Thanks so much for joining us. As always with all of our guests, if you could introduce yourself, tell us who you are and a little bit about yourself, that'd be great.
Thank you, Paddy, and thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today about the Martin Place project. My name's Michael Silman. I'm a passionate Sydney-sider and urbanist is how I would describe myself. But before we get underway today, I'd just like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I was born in Sydney, in northern Sydney, in Camaragal land, and I grew up in the 1970s and 1980s. And, you know, the relevance for conversation today, I would say there was sort of three main influences on my upbringing. I grew up in a construction family. So my father was a builder and was a business that he ran with my mother, and my two brothers, interestingly, are both involved in construction and carpentry as well. The second main influence for me was transport. My grandfather was a public servant in New South Wales, and he rose in the transport department to become the Secretary of Transport in the 1970s and 1980s, and that was at a time of investment in heavy rail, and interestingly, and indeed a nice connection for me, he was instrumental in the Eastern Suburbs railway line, which started from Martin Place out to Bondi Junction. So there's another influence.
Crikey, I didn't know any of this. This is brilliant.
Yeah, thank you. And I'd say the third thing is we as a family were heavily involved in the local community, and I then carried I suppose that commitment to community through my teenage years and adult life. So, involvement in surf life saving clubs and local soccer teams and other community organisations. And I think that gave me a grounding in the importance of community and the importance of being engaged in the local, in local environment. Yeah. Later on, when I went to uni, I developed a deep passion for cities, and that was sort of further advanced through studies in political economy. And I got to see the importance of cities on society, and again, building on this community idea, how you can supercharge economies through investments in cities and the people who live in them. And interestingly, I also studied anthropology a bit as well, and that gave me a sense of how people and the sort of behavioural science of people within cities. And then later I added to those technical real estate skills with studies in masters in real estate. So that's a bit of background on me.
That's brilliant. I love the story about your grandfather as well. I mean, doing what you're doing now must be quite special in terms.
Yeah, it's an awesome connection. Yeah. We've got at home, or my mother has at home the pamphlets and the opening. The opening invites for the Eastern Suburbs railway line and a whole suite of photographs. So that's really, that's a nice connection.
I've got shivers. How nice for your mum to be able to see that generational impact on the city as well. That's fantastic. Careers are my business, and I love to delve into people's careers. And I'd love to hear about your journey at Macquarie and understand, because you've been there for a long time, what it takes to create an enduring career in property in, probably our most iconic financial institution in Australia.
Yeah. Thanks, Paddy. Look, I've been lucky to work for Macquarie for 19 years. It'll be 20 when we finish this project. At the time I started, the organisation was accelerating its globalisation. We did have a few offshore offices, but we didn't have many. And we now have sort of 70 offices around the world. And so in a sense, my journey as a professional inside Macquarie has sat alongside that globalization push. And I've had the opportunity to work and be involved in a number of office openings and build a global network and be sort of work all around the world for Macquarie. And so, yeah, I would say it's the continual evolution of the organisation and the exciting work that is able to be put our way has kept me there. But I would also say it's the people. Macquarie is an organisation that's full of passionate, empowered people that are looking to do interesting things. And I've had the opportunity to work with and to continue to work with a whole group of really exciting and interesting people, indeed, all around the world. And on this project, there's a group of about half a dozen of us that have been working together for more than 15 years. So it's been a very interesting journey and continues to be so. You know, if I look back all those years ago, our first big project was number 1 Shelley Street in Sydney. And building on that, we went to other cities around the world and did similar sort of iconic workplaces, open, connected, collaborative workplaces in places like London and other cities. And then in 2012, we had the opportunity to purchase 48 Martin Place, or now 50 Martin Place, from the Commonwealth Bank and completely reposition that asset. And I must say, at that time, we thought, we finished the head office now. What is next? And again, back to this, you know, I suppose the energy of Macquarie and its constant evolution. We got the opportunity I've now had the opportunity to be involved in a whole precinct centred around Martin Place. So it's been a fantastic journey.
That's fantastic. And you haven't just worked in property as well. You've worked within the assets business in different areas as well. Is that right?
Yeah, principally my role has been as the global head of corporate real estate. I also had a couple of years as global head of group procurement as well. So a number of different roles and involvement with our property and real estate business in the Macquarie Capital area as well.
Apart from this project, in fact, apart from this project and 50 Martin Place, of the global projects that you've done, which were the favourites?
I'd say definitely our job in London. That was definitely a repositioning of that business and allowed us to, I suppose, improve the organisation's brand recognition in the city. So that I would say that's been apart from the Australian-based jobs, that's something that I'm very proud of.
Yeah, fantastic. You and I first met when we connected over Metro Martin Place, and have sort of worked together a little bit on that. And I mean, it's an incredible project, and I'm inspired by it. It's unique in so many ways, and I'm especially interested to understand the origin story. Where did it come from?
Yeah, thanks, Paddy. I mean, I think talk a bit about Macquarie's culture. The idea is really a product of the organisation's culture. We're, as an organisation, tuned to see opportunities in what might be otherwise adverse type situations. We did become aware of the Metro project that would be in and around what was then our brand new headquarters. And at the time, the co-head of Macquarie Capital, John Pickhaver, pulled together a really diverse team to have a look at this from an opportunity perspective. And diverse group, as I said, of people. We had engineers, we had financial analysts, we had construction people, and we had architects and engineers all sitting in a room, working on an idea and iterating on a concept, which became the integrated station concept. And that team, led by John, worked on the deal for the better part of 3 years.
And so you had your team working internally, but then how did you take that the next step to actually engage with government on?
Yeah, so as part of establishing the team, the idea of the integrated station came up, and really this was to allow the opportunity of the site to be maximised. And when I talk about integrated station, I'm talking about the structure of the office towers being integrated with the structure of the station, which allowed for the plant and equipment for the station to be dotted throughout the towers, which really gives the opportunity to open up the ground plane. And that was the idea that we took to government as part of an unsolicited proposal, and really have built on that concept from there. And to help us in that journey, we've been supported by a big team of consultants and specialists. Our design and construct partner is Lend Lease. And the architects that we've worked with is Grimshaw on the station, Alex Arns on the 39 Martin Place job, and on 1 Elizabeth Street, it's been Johnson, Pilton, Walker.
Yeah, fantastic. And Arup have been your engineering partner?
Of course, yeah, and a whole range of other technical specialists.
Yeah, there was a design panel as well that was sort of sitting alongside in terms of the overall design. What were can you tell me about the design and what the sort of big considerations were and the thing, what were you thinking about? And
yeah, sure. So in terms of the design of the precinct, as I said, we had this idea around an integrated station concept, and as part of the engagement with, with government and with others, we looked for examples around the world that were interesting to us. And we looked at Grand Central Station in particular and King's Cross and Pancras. And they were really sort of formative in terms of the activation of the ground plane, the concept of places for everyone, and as much as a diverse retail offering and public activation, but as well as really good pieces of civic architecture. And as an organisation, we've been given a very privileged position here to develop this very, very important site. And, in some senses, we all own Martin Place. It really is a civic asset, and particularly to create a station and what we hope will be the marquee station on the City and Southwest Line in the centre of the city. So for us, it was really important that we engaged in the community and that we spoke to a lot of people. And, we've set ourselves a vision to create a place for everyone. And you can't create a place for everyone if you don't talk to everyone. So for us, when we reflected on that, the first people that we went and spoke to were representatives of the local Gadigal community, and a company called Ballaringi assisted us with that. And we wanted to understand what Martin Place as a place meant to the Gadigal. It's situated in and around the tank stream, and it's always been a meeting place for tens of thousands of years before Europeans arrived. And so we went into that community and listened and obtained ideas for things that could be useful through our design of the buildings. And we've established some Indigenous design principles, and some of the things that we'll be taking from design into life is some of the art and some of the storytelling aspects that will help bring the Gadigal story alive through the community. So that was a particularly important engagement for us. The other thing we did around design is we looked to the context of what was there, and clearly the most iconic thing there is 50 Martin Place. Fabulous building, one of the preeminent heritage buildings really in the country, with its solid granite base, its ceramic tile facade, and its faceted roof. So we had a really good exemplar there for us to take a reference from. And we had the idea of the integrated station concept, but it's how to iterate on that and how to make that, how to maximise that opportunity. And in the early days, we established a design review panel to assist us to iterate on the design. And the design review panel consisted of 6 eminent architects, including the government architect of New South Wales. For us, back to the privileged position that I spoke about before, we care very deeply about what we're doing, and we recognise that putting a station and buildings right in the centre of the city, you need to do it properly, and you only get one opportunity to do it properly. So we really genuinely wanted to listen to the architecture community to help us with our plans.
And how did those the feedback that you had and the design panel land on these 2 beautiful structures that you're creating, and I think a beautiful structure underneath the ground as well?
Yeah. Maybe I'll start with underneath the ground first. One of the other things we did is we spoke to train commuters and people who will be catching the train. And so we went out into different parts of Sydney and spoke to people about what they wanted. And we heard a lot about accessibility and ease of access off trains. We heard a lot about wayfinding and intuitive ways to get in and around the city. We heard a lot about the importance of public activation and other types of features. And we're really excited about the station that we're delivering here and feel that it has intuitive access. We're excited about the materials and the finishes, and we hope that they delight the Metro customers. So really the whole concept built from the station, and that was really a lead that was coming to us from the New South Wales government and obviously from Sydney Metro.
Can you describe it inside?
Yeah, sure. So it's the whole site bounds, and we should probably describe the site actually. Yeah. It's bounded by Elizabeth Street, Castlereagh, Hunter Street, and Martin Place. So it's back a bit from Martin Place because it also includes a site that sits back from Martin Place. 25 metres underground, and 50 Martin Place is effectively a sandstone island within that. So we excavated, or the Land Lease team excavated down and around 50 Martin Place. There's tunnels all around and in part of that building. We're connecting into the eastern suburbs line, so there's a hard rail connection there, and we're providing future connection opportunities into the Hunter Street station, which will take you out to Metro West. So it's a big site. Opportunities, as I said, to excavate down and then build back up again. Large station cavern. We've thought a lot about how people get on and off the trains. So again, if you think about, say, the Tube in London, you get off the train and you're kind of tracking back on the platform. For us, we wanted to get people off the trains and into the central passenger halls. So we have one large central passenger hall. Through the integrated station concept, we've been able to get natural light down onto that platform. Okay. So you'll be able to stand on the platform and look up to the sky above. And it's certainly our hope that we get lots of natural light down there as well. And intuitive wayfinding and connections across the site and around the site to allow people to choose at the platform level whether they're going north, south, east or west.
Brilliant. And the two buildings?
Yeah, the two buildings. So mentioning the architects, so Johnson, Pilton, Walker for 1 Elizabeth Street, they were the architects for our refurbishment of 50 Martin Place. And were instrumental in creating that iconic roof structure with its faceted, faceted glazed facade. And you'll see that 1 Elizabeth Street has a faceted glazed facade, which is really paying deference to 50 Martin Place. I think the other interesting feature about that building is while we do have a sun access plane, which is a planning control for the building, you'll see that it has a curved nature to it. Again, denoting the curved nature of 50 Martin Place's facade. And in a sense, it's leaning back and, again, paying deference to 50 as the most iconic part of the site. So we've really endeavoured to celebrate 50 as part of this. And, I think the other really interesting thing is that building is going to be completed almost 100 years after 50 Martin Place. So I think that's a really interesting story. That's a big building, 37 floors of office space, about 60,000 square metres of net lettable area. It'll have a granite base to the building, which is similar to, or it's very similar to the base of 50 Martin Place. We're also connecting in to the back of 50 Martin Place across 5 floors, which allows permeability for users of the building across what is effectively a whole city block. So it's a very exciting building. Very exciting building.
4,000 square metres?
Sort of across the whole site.
Yeah.
So 2,000 square metres for 50 Martin Place and about 2,000 square metres and a bit at the base of what we're calling 1 Elizabeth Street. And then that gets smaller as we go up through the building. But side core, great big atriums, coloured stairs, as you would expect from a Macquarie workplace.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the whole integrated nature of the whole project, as you can move from here to there with ease, and even through the two buildings, which is
and the other building, so 39 Martin Place is the concept was Alex Zarnes and his team that have thought about a modern interpretation of 50 Martin Place, similar to your point around it, the whole precinct being one unified, I suppose, piece of architecture. The base of that is a granite base. It comes from a similar quarry to the quarry for 50 Martin Place almost 100 years ago. It will have a ceramic tile facade similar to 50 Martin Place. The difference will be on the front of 50 Martin Place are these large ionic ceramic columns. The 39 Martin Place are reimagining those with curved glass. So again, recognising that workplaces today are more open and transparent than they were 100 years ago. So that's super exciting building, and we know people are going to be delighted with that when we're finished.
I can't wait to see it. Really can't wait. And what have been the biggest challenges? It's an enormous undertaking, and how have you overcome them?
As I kind of say before, it's a big site, it's a complex site. We're excavating or have excavated the main east-west pedestrian link through the city. We've got our own organisation which has continued to operate in 50 Martin Place throughout the excavation and development period. We've got the Commonwealth Bank of Australia in the base of 48 Martin Place. That's their main branch. So we've needed to work with them on that. Tunnelling in and around and indeed 6 metres below the foundations of the building. So there's been a lot of work around the geotechnical aspects of the site and making sure we preserve the heritage building, making sure we keep the public safe through the development period. And I think the other thing I would say about challenges, of course, we've been operating through, or largely the Lend-Lease team and our team through the COVID-19 period, which has been very challenging. And then, it rained a lot too in Sydney, wettest year on record. So I think we've had lots of things to deal with. But something I would say about this project, and indeed we think it is a bit of a special ingredient, is the collaborative way in which we've worked as a whole collective team. So Macquarie team's about 50 people with varying disciplines. So we're, as I said, we're very committed to this project. We see it as very important for Sydney and for New South Wales. So we've invested heavily in our own team, working alongside Lend-Lease and Sydney Metro. We're all co-located together. So we're able to deal with issues and indeed assess opportunities in real time. And, if you think about the challenges that have been thrown our way, and in particular COVID, I mean, nobody's contract has a COVID clause. So we've had to work through these issues together as a team. And, we formed a really great partnership with Lend-Lease and with Sydney Metro through this project.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And it's noticeable as well in the interactions that I have with your team. It's pretty fantastic. What we've talked about the design and the origination, but what does this project mean for Macquarie?
Yeah, so I think there's a few things. We expect that it'll be an example, or hope rather, that it'll be an example of public-private partnership working together again about this spirit of collaboration between us, and we hope we all share in the success of that. I think for our organisation, we are a global business, but we're based in Sydney, and so certainly that's a statement of commitment to Sydney. It's an iconic building for our staff to operate in. So we hope that they're going to love that workplace. And, back to something that I said before around this part of the city, 50 Martin Place 100 years ago was developed by a New South Wales bank. And here we are as a global bank working with the New South Wales government to develop the whole precinct. I think that says something interesting about the evolution of the Australian economy as well. So.
Yeah, fantastic. And thinking about the workplace itself, then in terms of the functionality of what you're creating, I know that was always 50 Martin Place is famous for creating those fantastic lifts that go through the middle and the open workplaces and the atrium, what have you. What's the impact that you're having on your team, on your people then in this building?
Yeah, so I think first thing I'd say about our people is this is an opportunity to bring everyone together. We've, as an organisation, grown in Sydney quite significantly over the last 20, 25 years, and we haven't had the opportunity to put everyone in the one building. So I think the first thing is the opportunity to get everyone together and celebrate the size of our organisation in Sydney would be the first thing that I would say. As I mentioned before, we have connected the two buildings to create this contiguous workplace. We see the importance of investing heavily in community space for our people and wellbeing features. So certainly that's been a focus for us. And, in more recent times, we, with the advent of hybrid working, it's been important for us to think about, what are the core elements of being able to tool the building for hybrid working. So additional investments in things like AVVC systems, giving people sit-to-stand desks, and also, as I said, the importance of sustainability to not just to our organisation, but indeed to everyone. the whole development we've thought about sustainability from the design, the construction, and through to the ongoing operations. And the buildings are designed and the station are designed to 6-star Green Star. But we've also thought about sustainability through the construction phase as well. And the Lend-Lease team and Sydney Metro have put forward some very ambitious sort of social sustainability targets. So things like employment targets for underrepresented people in our community, and we're very proud of the work that Lend-Lease are doing in that regard. Other things from a social sustainability perspective, getting back to this concept of community and being involved in communities, we have worked hard to use timber, locally sourced timber for our meeting room tables and indeed main boardroom, and that's from an Aboriginal sourced or Aboriginal owned mill up in North Queensland. And the meeting rooms as well will use old telegraph poles around the sides of the meeting room. So lots of sustainability features, I would say. And then into operations, we're fully electrified across the precinct. So the station and 1 Elizabeth Street will have no gas connection and we'll be operating on renewable energy. So we think that that's a really good sustainability message into the future as well.
Brilliant. And we talked about, 1,000 people auditorium and open spaces and for the teams. And
Thanks for the job. There's a lot to talk about on this precinct. I think if I just sort of pivot back to talk a bit about what we're doing for the city and the impact on the city, the integrated station concept has allowed us to lift not only to put the plant and equipment for the station throughout the buildings to open up the ground plane, but we've also lifted the commercial office lobbies onto the first floor so that we can activate and create this nice, interconnectivity between the public space and the private space and have these mixed zones. The lower part of 1 Elizabeth Street is going to be a fantastic public space where there's really significant investment in public art. So we're refurbishing some salvaged works from 55 Hunter Street, which was one of the buildings that was on the site before. There was a Tom Bass fountain and a number of Douglas and And works and others that are in the process of being refurbished and reinstated on the site, as well as some new acquisitions by both Sydney Metro and Macquarie that we're going to be delighted to integrate into the ground plane of that space. We've got public seating, we've got public amenities, we've got Wi-Fi. We're hoping that that's a really exciting place for people to meet and to gather in the city. And as you said, above that, there are public or spaces that are available for public hire, including a large 1,000-person auditorium and some training spaces that will be made available for use by the community when Macquarie doesn't require that. So a really nice, opportunity for us to think bigger about the impact that we're having on the whole community.
It's a destination.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, the retail. Interesting things about the Sydney Metro program is the Sydney Metro line is its provision to operate 22 hours a day, 7 days a week. So this whole concept of day to night retail, I think is definitely going to be supercharged on that site.
I think we've touched on it quite a few times in different parts of the conversation, but what's the impact of this on the city? If you could encapsulate it in a sort of, in your words.
Yeah, sure. I think there's a couple of things to talk about when we think about the impact on the community. If we think about Sydney and its commuting patterns, and particularly its public transport community patterns, they're centred around a Wynyard at the moment. So you've got the heavy rail coming in there and you've got most of the buses coming in there. If we sort of fast forward a few years to when our station opens and then the Hunter Street station as well, the hub will very much be in and around Martin Place. And our station connects into the eastern suburbs line. So we will have this main connectivity hub in Sydney. I think the other thing to talk about is actually the impact of the overall metro project and what that will have on Sydney. And I suspect we don't quite yet know, other than it will absolutely be transformational. There's 4 metro lines that are being constructed 46 stations, 113 kilometres of new metro trains by 2030. And so that's going to radically change the way people commute in and around, not just around our site, but around the whole city. Mm-hmm. I think the other thing to think about in terms of the impact on the city is to think about the long arc of history of Martin Place. And as I said before, from the Gadigal's perspective, Martin Place has always been a meeting place and in and around the tank stream. And so we certainly should recognise that. But since Europeans have arrived, the Martin Place's evolution has generally occurred in and around government transport or infrastructure projects. And the first one of those was in the 1850s with James Barnett's GPO, which was a very ambitious project at the time. It took 30 years to construct, but it was originally put on a 15-foot laneway. So it was a very visionary project to really set up Martin Place for its future evolutions. And I think the next big journey or I suppose shift for Martin Place was in the 1930s when the Australian government built 5 Martin Place, which was not only the headquarters for the CBA, but also the Sydney office for the Prime Minister and the Governor-General. And it wasn't that long ago. It was Bob Hawke was the last Prime Minister to use that as his Sydney office. So that was another impetus to all the bank buildings that proliferated up and down Martin Place, of which 50 was one of those as well. So I think that's an interesting, I suppose, commitment that government's made. But it was really in the 1970s, back to the project my grandfather was intimately involved with, was the Eastern Suburbs Line, and that was the opportunity to fully pedestrianise Martin Place and create the amphitheatre and really turn it into the civic and cultural and business heart that it is today. So I think we need to see the context of what we're doing here, which is really just, I suppose, our generation's turn at doing that. And here we are today modernising Martin Place, this fantastic underground station. If you think about the journey as you get off the station, moving through and past the retail, an activated precinct, opportunities to choose your direction, and then really popping out onto Martin Place and its surrounds. I think it's really exciting.
Yeah, such a good story. When are we expected to see everything? When is it going to be finished?
Yeah, so we've still got a year to go.
Yeah.
So 2024 is when we will complete. It's also the time that we expect to be moving our own staff into the building. So 2024.
Fantastic. And thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And you've told a fantastic story in so many different ways, including your own. As a final question, how will you know when the project's been a success and that you can walk away, a happy man?
Yeah, I think, firstly, I think success is for others to judge. If people love the station, we get good feedback from that, and if people love using the buildings, I think we will have achieved what we set out to be. I think it's important, again, back to what I said is this what we think is one of the secret elements of what we're doing here. It's about the team. We've got a big team, and I'd really, I suppose I'd defer to our team and to get feedback on how we've done. But one of the things I did do when we finished 50 Martin Place is I used to sit in a quiet corner and watch people, as you mentioned before, the curved lips coming into the building and watching the reaction on their faces and, getting, I suppose, by osmosis, getting their feedback. And I suspect I'll do that in the station as well.
Fantastic.
Sit in a cafe and watch people as they walk through the station.
Brilliant. Michael, thank you so much. Been very generous with your time. Been brilliant talking to you.
Thanks, Paddy.